Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our third roadshow event. This is the college's districting committee's effort to get public input on the work that we've been doing for the past few weeks. And I want to thank Dr. Mo for organizing the committee and providing a structure for our meetings, and to all of the staff that is participating, to the consultants who will be presenting today, and to the committee for giving all your time to this process. So we hope that this process results in a fair map that will help facilitate the college's duties going forward for the next 10 years. So does anybody from the board, would anybody like to say anything? No? So we have two map presentations that we're excited to present to you today, and we hope to get some public input on them before we make our recommendation to the board. This afternoon will be another opportunity at 2 p.m. at the Valle Verde campus to attend another meeting, and then Monday at the Rio Grande campus at 6 p.m. Go ahead, Mr. Sequist.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Gunnar Sequist. I'm with the firm of Bickerstaff, and it is our privilege to be able to assist the El Paso Community College District in its redistricting process. As Dr. Renteria said, the board has appointed the advisory committee here to make a recommendation on some redistricting options for the board to consider. And ultimately, of course, it'll be the Board of Trustees for the community college's decision on what map to go forward with. But the board was very interested in having public input, both in terms of the assistance of the committee and also from the public at large, which is why we are holding these meetings, as well as there will be, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later, a public hearing before the board on November 29th, which the public is invited to come and give comment at as well. And I just want to recognize and thank for all of their effort and input, the Redistricting Advisory Committee that we have here today. Would each of you like to just kind of introduce yourselves and give your names?
My name is Raul Lerma, and had the pleasure. My name is Raul Lerma, and had the pleasure of working at El Paso Community College for 5 years. So it's a pleasure to be working on this committee to come up with these redistricting maps. Thank you.
My name is George Ibarra, and I have had some experience doing some of these maps. Hopefully you'll like what we have presented to you guys, and I'll pass it on.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Daniel Bueno. I'm a formal EPCC alumni myself, and I'm looking forward to helping my community and incentivizing community input towards this process.
Good morning. My name is Paul Arciniega. I'm currently a El Paso Community College student, and I'm enjoying learning about the redistricting process.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Wesley Lawrence. I am the SD29 representative for Texas for the Democratic Party. It's been an honor to serve on this committee with such amazing people, and I look forward to presenting the maps to the community and hearing from the public. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. And not everyone was able to be with us here this morning, but I do want to at least recognize and acknowledge the hard work of some other committee members, Ms. Emma Acosta, Mr. Brandon Burt, Mr. Joshua Carter Guerra, Mr. Julian Hita, and Mr. Inocente Quintanilla, all of whom couldn't be with us this morning but have been very active in participating in our meetings and made great contributions. So we thank everyone, both present and those who couldn't be here today, for their input and assistance in this process. Before we get into the maps, I'd just like to give a brief overview of the redistricting process. This process is triggered every 10 years by the federal census that's taken and released. And redistricting for governmental entities such as the El Paso Community College relates to the balancing of population in each of the single member districts. The community college here has 7 trustees that sit on the board of trustees, and each of them is elected from a different district within the district's boundaries. And so when the census is released every 10 years, it's incumbent upon the board to make sure that those districts are balanced in population, which is the redistricting process. So as part of redistricting, what changes? Well, we move and revise the boundaries for each of those single-member trustee districts in order to balance population. So it's a question of moving the boundaries in order to capture population and move population to balance across the districts. And what that ultimately affects, what results from this process is it changes, to some extent, the districts in which candidates run from, because a candidate has to live in the district in which they run for the board. And it also changes which candidate voters have the opportunity to vote for, because voters only get to vote for the candidates running in the districts that they live. So that's how the single member districts work. As I mentioned, there are 7 Board of Trustee districts within the El Paso Community College District. And this is a list of the current board members. District 1 is held by Mr. John Uxer. District 2 is Mr. Brian Haggerty, who is the chair of the Board of Trustees. District 3 is Ms. Belen Robles. District 4 is the board secretary, Ms. Cristina Sanchez. District 5 is Dr. Carmen Olivas Graham, who is the board vice chair. District 6 is held by Ms. Nina Pina. And District 7 is Ms. Bonnie Najera. And here on the screen is the current maps. And these are the districts as they exist right now. And these are the districts for which we got the 2020 census data. And so for those who want a close-up look, we also have handouts that have this information on it in the front. But this is what the current districts look like. Of course, there are 7 districts. 1, 2, and 3 currently go across the north side of the district, moving from west to east, and then 4, 5, 6, and 7 along the south side, again, west to east. So when we are talking about redistricting, what we are focusing on is the one person, one vote requirement under the United States Constitution. And what that tells us is that for single-member districts, such as the community colleges trustee districts, you have to have approximately equal population in each of your districts. Now, based on where people live and where census blocks are located, you can't draw them exactly equal. So what the courts have told us, and what this federal process focuses on, is maintaining a total deviation across the districts that is less than 10%. The reason for that, of course, is if you have a district that is either significantly underpopulated or overpopulated in comparison to its neighbors, that can have the effect of either undervaluing or overvaluing the vote for the members in those districts. So we try to get rough population balance across the districts, and that way we have one person, one vote, equal opportunity across districts. So in terms of calculating that total deviation, that 10% number, basically what we do is we take what would be an ideal number. That is, if you could divide the total population of the district evenly across each of the 7 trustee districts, that gives us an ideal. We then look, based on the 2020 census numbers, to understand the district that is the highest above that ideal and the district that is the lowest below that ideal. And we take those differences and add them together, and that gives us the total deviation across the district. So the total deviation between the most populous and the least populous. And again, we rebalance the districts, we redraw the boundaries to get that number down below 10%. And this is a sample calculation that shows basically how that works. So if we had a hypothetical district that had districts A, B, C, and D in it, if A was 10% above the ideal and D was 20% below, the total difference between those would be 30%. That would mean that we were above our 10%. This hypothetical district would therefore have to redistrict. So here are the numbers based on the 2020 census for the El Paso Community College District. And what we see here is the total population, at least as reported by the 2020 census, is 865,657 people within the community college district and boundaries. If we were to then divide that by 7, that would give us an ideal size of approximately 123,665. So that would be the exact equal number across all the districts. If we look at the 2020 census numbers as shown in this chart, what we see is that currently, based on the 2020 census, trustee districts 3 and trustee district 7 are overpopulated, both by about 16.75%. Conversely, districts 4, 5, and 6 are underpopulated, varying amounts, kind of between 8.5 to about 15.75%. So the exercise in terms of redistricting here is moving population from districts 3 and 7, and then balancing it out and infilling across 4, 5, and 6, so we have that balance across those districts. And if we were to look at our overall deviation, here again, District 3 is the most overpopulated at 16.75%, and then District, let's see, I believe it's 4 is the least or the most underpopulated at negative 15.7%. So if we add those two together, what we get is 32.52% as our overall deviation. And obviously that's well in excess of the maximum deviation allowable under the law. And so that is why the college district is going through this process and going through the redistricting process. We also have reported and available for the public the voting age population data from the census. And what this gives us is demographic breakdown information. And currently under the 2020 census, what we have from a demographic standpoint is all 7 of the college trustee districts are Latino majority districts. And that will be true of all of the plans that the committee has presented as well. So you're not going to see much of a change in terms of the demographic numbers as we go through the plan. It's really just balancing total population to make sure we get to that one person, one vote standard. The Board of Trustees has adopted some criteria to govern this process, both the committee's work in making a recommendation and then also the board's ultimate adoption. And these criteria come from the courts. These are what the courts have told us are the legitimate criteria to be considered in a redistricting. And the first one there is in drawing boundaries, we use identifiable boundaries. That's major roadways, identifiable geographic features, rivers, creeks, golf courses, the mountain in some circumstances here in El Paso. But basically, the purpose of using these readily identifiable boundaries is that it makes it easy for people to understand where the boundary lines are and to know where their district ends and where it begins. The other thing, or the next criteria, is the maintaining of communities of interests and neighborhoods. And in particular, communities of interest may share values or other similarities on any number of metrics, really. But for those groups who have shared common interests, shared common goals, or for neighborhoods that have traditionally been kept together in a trustee district, the committee has worked very hard to respect that and acknowledge that in its work, and the board will be looking to do that as well. The committee and the board are redrawing using whole voting precincts, and those are the election precincts. It determines where you actually go to cast your ballot. We try to keep whole precincts together. The reason for that is just to minimize confusion. If you keep a precinct together, then everybody in that election precinct, as far as it relates to the community college district, is voting in the same trustee district. If you end up splitting a precinct, which can happen sometimes just depending on where people are, then you have the situation where people in the same election precinct may end up voting in 2 different, or different trustee districts may be represented in the same election precinct. And we try to avoid that wherever possible, just because, again, it reduces confusion and it's less disruptive to the voting process, makes voting easier, which is the ultimate goal of this process. The committee is basing its plans, and the board has asked that the plans be based on existing districts. Again, this is an exercise in rebalancing population. We're not trying to start from scratch or just redraw all of the districts. Again, trying to make this process as least disruptive and to reduce any confusion as much as possible. So working from the existing districts. We are working to adopt districts of relatively equal size. That's the one person, one vote standard. The districts are compact and contiguous, basically not strung out. Again, makes it easier for people to recognize and identify their district and understand logically where they're voting in comparison to their neighbors. The criteria also keep existing incumbents in their districts, and that's really to respect the incumbent constituency relationships that have been developed. voters have built relationships with the folks that they have had an opportunity to be represented by. Representatives have built those relationships and also learned, the trustees have learned their position, and so this process respects that work. And then finally, we narrowly tailor any plan to comply with the Voting Rights Act. Applicable here, Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act is an anti-discrimination provision, and it requires that any plan that's adopted not have a discriminatory effect on protecting voting groups, both racial, ethnic, and language protected status. And so that's one of the things that we are keeping in mind as we go through this process too, and the committee has looked at in drawing these maps. Okay. To balance that population under the one person, one vote standard, and also taking into account each of those criteria, the committee has met on several occasions prior to today and these public input meetings, and has prepared 2 draft plans to submit to the public to request public input and community input on. And those will be labeled Plan A and B. And I'm going to show them here on the screen and talk about them a little bit, but we also, for anyone present, have large-scale maps that are in the lobby outside the conference room here that people are welcome to take a look at. And for those who couldn't be here with us and present, all of these couldn't be here with us this morning, all of these materials are also available on the community college's website, so we encourage you, if you're watching this as a recording, to go and have a look at that, download them, take a look, and there's an opportunity for you to provide a public comment form on the website as well. And we certainly encourage anyone watching us today to do that so that the committee can have the benefit of your comment. Plan A is the first plan that the committee has put together. And if we look at Plan A, sort of the major or the major features of the plan are that District 1 trades a little bit of population with District 4 to get a little bit of a cleaner line boundary on the south side there, but not a whole lot of change there. District 2 changes a little more substantially. It gives up some population to Districts 3 and 4 on the south side, and then it takes in a fair amount of population from the old District 3 along the north side there, headed off to the east. District 3 gives up that population to District 2, and in doing so becomes a little bit more compact and centralized in the center of the map there. And then District 4 also is going to give up some population on what was its sort of southeast boundary before, and it's going to become a little bit more compact along the south side of the map there. District 5 in this particular map gives a fair amount of its old territory to District 3, and then takes, at least in the center of the map there, and then takes territory from the old District 3 moving out to the northeast. And so it encompasses that area. District 6 gives a little bit of its territory over to Districts 5 and 4, but then takes in some territory from District 7 to balance that out. And so again, what this map accomplishes is it's taking some population from those Districts 3 and 7 and spreading it back across to the west, across 4, 5, and 6, in a manner that the committee feels, identifies with those criteria, and in particular preserves some communities of interest and neighborhoods here, and also achieves what the committee feels like are some good compactness there in some of those central districts. We have available in the map here, both online and here present, also a map that shows with each of those changes the specific election precincts and where they fall in the map. So that's something that folks can refer to. And this is the population chart associated with Plan A. And what you'll see here is the overall deviation, which as we started out under the 2020 census was in the 30s, now comes down to 1.76. So you have that roughly equal population across your districts here, well within the one person, one vote requirement, so a good deviation there. Again, here's the voting age population information for anybody who wants to see it. No major change. You still have the same demographic breakdown roughly as 7 Latino majority districts within the community college district. And there is one thing that the committee would like to point out or identify for some additional public feedback, either for anyone who's here or for anyone who is watching this online. There are approximately 3 precincts on the boundary between districts 5 or 6, which the committee has kind of seen both ways. Could go to District 5, could go to District 6. And so if there is anyone who has any particular ideas about these districts, and in specific, it's 120, 121, and 122, these election precincts, if you happen to live there or otherwise familiar with them, if you have any particular thoughts or feelings about whether they are a better fit with 5 or 6, I know that is something that the committee would like to hear from the public on. Okay, and that takes us to Plan B. And Plan B is very similar in many respects to Plan A, particularly in the way that that District 1 changes. We see sort of the same changes also on the south side of District 2, as well as District 2 trading with District 3 and taking that area off to the northeast there. The primary difference, I think, in this map and Plan B as opposed to Plan A, is really the dividing line between District 6 and 7. In this case, District 6 gives more of its original territory to District 5, and in doing so, it's able to take up more of District 7. So more of that population moves from 7 into 6. And what we see particularly is that sort of light shaded green area or light blue area on the south side of 6 that goes below that red line there. That's more territory that 6 has been able to take from 7 in this map. So that's kind of the primary difference, is how 6 interacts with 5 and 7 in Plan B. Once again, we have the election precincts map here available for anybody who wants to see it. And then if we look at our population chart, once again, the overall deviation on Plan B from the committee is 3.81%. It's a little bit higher than Plan A, but it's still a very good deviation and well within that 1 person, 1 vote requirement. And so that is acceptable legally there. Once again, same general demographic distribution. And so the committee is holding these meetings and presenting these maps for the purpose of getting general public input. And in particular, the committee is very much interested in the public in terms of what do you like, what do you not like about the suggestions, or excuse me, about the proposed plans, whether the public has any other suggestions for the committee. And that can be in terms of, where boundaries are drawn, where specific election precincts fit into the plan, and if there are any communities of interest or neighborhoods that you feel like should be kept together or not. Then that's certainly something the committee would like to hear about, as well as any other thoughts. Frankly, the committee welcomes any public input and ideas into this process because they want it to be as comprehensive a process as it can be. And so we do have, for anybody who's here today who'd like to make a public comment, we have a microphone we'd be happy to give you and let you address the committee directly. Alternatively, we have public comment forms that are here in person that you're welcome to fill out and submit, or as I mentioned, there is a public comment tab on the website, so you can do that remotely. It will get its way to the committee. It'll be available for the board as well. So please do feel free to avail yourself of one of those means of providing some public input. And then I just want to give, before I close here, the next steps for this process. As Dr. Renteria mentioned, we have one more public input meeting this afternoon, and then one Monday, November 7th at 6 p.m. at the Rio Grande campus. After that, the committee will be working to finalize its recommendation and tender that recommendation on or before November 18th to the full Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees will then hold a public hearing at the Administrative Services Center on November 29th. And that is another opportunity for anyone in the public to come, provide public input, and actually to address the board directly, whether it's on the committee's recommendation or any other input that the public has. And then after that public hearing, the board will have an opportunity to consider the maps, consider any public input, and can move forward either with a final adoption on that day or at a later date if it needs more time to consider. So the general time frame is a public hearing on November 29th and then adoption in the near term thereafter. So that is the process. Thanks to everyone who has watched us or joined us in these public input meetings. Thanks again to the committee for their hard work and to the El Paso Community College staff for facilitating all of this process. We very much appreciate the opportunity to work with you.
Well, thank you to everybody who is here today and who took time to be part of this process. I do want to just add that the public can also submit comments to the committee at www.epcc.edu/administration/board of trustees/redistricting. And I get to it very easily by just saying epcc.edu districting. So thank you everybody for your time, and we'll see you this afternoon.